So still kind of wild. After a decade in the making, Tesla finally actually legitimately charging paying customers to use their robotaxis in Austin, Texas. Many said this day would never come. Yet here we are. I'm just going to read this. Quote, on screen on CNBC. Tesla debuts robotaxis. Stick that in your spreadsheet and smoke it.
Let's bring in Fast Money friend and Deepwater Asset Management Managing Director, Gene Munster, for more. Gene, great to have you with us.
Hello.
Was it worth 8%? I mean, there's a guy sitting in the front seat. It was a very limited amount of Austin, Texas, and the only people who got rides were stock devotees and social media influencers.
I think the answer, Melissa, is yes, it is. And stick with me here, is that if we look at just today's event, it doesn't add up to that 8% move. But we put in the context of what's happened over the past 5 years and 7 years. And as somebody who believes in everything they're building, this comment is going to seem harsh, but this company has largely overpromised and undelivered on these big milestones. And so when the fact that they got it off and, well, it was limited, I think is an encouragement that they are moving towards the right direction. And the other piece about that 8% move is this direction is not a small direction in terms of the impact that it could have to the model. I mean, it could fundamentally change the profit picture. I mean, the vast majority of this company's income could come from autonomous services, whether it's FSD or Robotaxi or...
Just want to jump in here. Will, not could. I mean, it's so obvious. Let's break it down. Real simple numbers. Tesla FSD subscription, roughly $100 a month. If an additional 1 million Tesla vehicles, which, by the way, there's already 8 million on roads today, subscribe to FSD, that's $1.2 billion a year of additional revenue, almost pure profit to Tesla, just from increased take rates on FSD as it becomes increasingly more capable. And there's a massive paradigm shift happening, right? Today, still not legal to use FSD unsupervised anywhere in the US, except in Austin, Texas, as a paying customer of Tesla's Robotaxi service. But as a consumer, if you can buy a Tesla and legally operate your Tesla on FSD unsupervised, meaning you do not have to pay attention, the increased utility here is enormous. Take rates are obviously going to increase as FSD transitions from supervised to unsupervised. So out of nowhere, a marginal increase in FSD take rates, and Tesla's already printing over $1 billion a year additional profits. But the Robotaxi business itself is on a whole other fucking level. At some point in the future, Tesla inevitably will have 1 million Robotaxis operating full-time globally. I'm not telling you when it's going to happen, but it will happen. If each of these vehicles is doing 50,000 miles per year, which is less than a full-time taxi, but not that much less, charging $2 a mile with a 25% profit, it's going to be a lot higher in terms of total profit per mile. But hey, whatever. That's 50 cents per mile. That would be $25 billion of profits. I'm going to say that again. 1 million Tesla Robotaxis doing less miles per year than a full-time taxi with just a 25% profit per mile at $2 a mile, which, by the way, Uber's cut is 25% off the top and they have to pay a human driver. That's $25 billion of profits per year. It's going to make Tesla's automotive business and energy business look like a rounding error. The question isn't if profits from Tesla's autonomy, including FSD subscriptions plus Robotaxi business, overtakes the rest of their existing business. It's not if, but when.
Optimus. And so in that context, and we're still at a $1.1 trillion market cap, it still feels like there's room to go if you believe in that vision. And so I see this as an appropriate move to the stock today.
Gene, at what point do you think that contribution actually starts to happen for this stock? Because if you look at the EV business, it couldn't be worse. It's literally at the worst spot that it's ever been if you go back a decade or so. So to believe that it's worth $1 trillion on its way to 2 or 3, you have to believe in sooner than later that there's going to be a material contribution. And I just can't imagine that the margins for the first couple of years are going to be any good. You have to assume they're going to be losing money on this sort of trade. So I'm just curious, thoughts there.
On the maybe start with the second piece of that, on the losing money, a different obviously setup versus what's going on with Waymo and that 100,000 plus per vehicle. This is an asset light approach. They're funding the initial vehicles probably for the next year, but most of this is going to be funded. So I think that this business could be profitable probably within a year or two, albeit the revenue is going to be pretty modest too, which gets to the first point of like, when does this actually, we've been waiting and this was a big step forward, but when is it actually going to be impacting the model? It probably isn't for 2030. And to put some context around like what potentially could be the impact by 2030 is that if they're on a path by 2030 to get to 70% share of the ride market, actually in 2030, if they hit like a 30 or 40% share of that market, it's going to basically double their operating income. So this is still way out there. And then how does that jive? If we're still talking 5 years out there, how does that jive with my feeling that this is a justified move? And I think the answer is that, yes, it's 5 years out there, but it's an undeniable truth is that this market is going to be fundamentally changed. And it's a big market, $90 billion a year in the US alone. And it's really going to come down to Waymo and Tesla, and Uber and Lyft are largely going to be.
Okay, so Gene kind of gets it, but doesn't get it. And I think historically he's been quite skeptical, even though he's considered a Tesla bull. He's just been very, very skeptical. The idea that Uber is going to go, not be participating, so to speak, totally fair. They're fucked. Abso-fucking-lutely fucked. I mean, completely spit roasted. Train ran through, just gone. They're fucked. But to think that Waymo's going to be around in any meaningful way in the future, the only way that Waymo survives over the next 5-10 years is if they continue to suck from the teat of Daddy Alphabet, aka Google, because they cannot compete with Tesla on cost per mile. They don't make their own vehicles. And even if they did, they'd have to be making them more affordably than Tesla to have a cost advantage. We know today a Waymo vehicle is roughly 7 times the cost of a Tesla Model Y. And we also know that Tesla will drive their cost per mile down as they can meet wait times and demand because it's directly in line with their mission. I remind you guys that today, in terms of electric vehicles, Tesla's the only company on earth making any money. Apparently, maybe BYD might, possibly, maybe be making a tiny bit of money selling their EVs, but we don't really know because they don't separately report different parts of their business. And they also have a battery supply business, which is printing money, and I personally suspect is actually covering losses from the EV business. If companies producing electric vehicles want to sell them in the same marketplace called Earth that Tesla's selling electric vehicles, they must compete on cost. The problem is Tesla's the only company that has profitable EVs at scale, and they keep passing on cost savings to customers. Everyone else trying to compete has to follow. Waymo's going to need to do the exact same thing with cost per mile for autonomy, and they're already losing crazy money. They have a massive cost disadvantage. They can't overcome this. So it's possible Waymo's around in 5 or 10 years, but the only reason that happens is if Google just won't kill the project. That's not a success. If you are dependent upon a sugar daddy for your continued existence, that's not a business. That's embarrassing. There's 3 big milestones to focus on for Tesla autonomy, in my opinion. Fleet size. Now, actual miles driven matters, but we're going to assume that each of these is a full-time Robotaxi and it's doing roughly 50,000 miles a year. The first massive milestone is 10,000 Tesla Robotaxis. The next is 100,000, an order of magnitude increase, then 1 million. In the example I gave earlier, 1 million Tesla Robotaxis, 50,000 miles a year, 50 cent profit per mile, which is a massive underestimate, but whatever. We're talking $24 billion a year of profits, and these are conservative estimates. Even at 100,000, we're talking $2.4 billion a year. It seems inevitable to me that in just a few years, Tesla Robotaxis will be making many billions of dollars of profits annually. I think this is going to happen a lot faster than just about anyone expects. And what Gene's talking about here, even if he's a little bit off on the timing, I mean, maybe I'm off on the timing, he's pointing out the inevitability that Tesla's going to absolutely dominate this market and the market's abso-fucking-lutely gigantic. He's pointing out, it's going to take 5 years before it meaningfully impacts things. But it's still going to happen. This is important. Gene is acknowledging Tesla's already fucking won. He's right. We just may slightly disagree on how quickly things scale and how big the opportunity. Remember, by the way, Gene is currently sizing up the current rideshare market as the potential opportunity, but spoiler alert, if Tesla can, by the way they will, drive their cost per mile down below current rideshare averages, you know what's going to happen, right? More people will be able to afford to use transport as a service, e.g. robotaxis, therefore more people will, therefore total miles driven will increase, therefore the actual market itself is likely to expand dramatically over time.
Relevant in that future. And so I think that's the piece, that nugget, that carrot that's out there still is not going to go away, despite what I agree is going to be this is going to be an ugly year on their car business.
Good thing Tesla is not just a car company. Dan Ives, never one to miss an opportunity to appear in the finance media, has some thoughts on Tesla's Robotaxi launch in Austin, Texas.
Dan, you weren't there personally. I'm sure everybody was a little disappointed you weren't there personally, but you had one of your associates and your team there. What did you make of these rides of few vehicles in a very limited geo-fenced off space?
I mean, I thought it was extremely smooth, everything we saw, not just from a safety perspective, maneuverability was way impressive. I thought actually better than even Waymo coming out of the gates. I mean, Frank, going in, I thought it would be an 8 out of 10. I think it was a 10 out of 10 relative to our experience, 2 15-minute drives that our team had. And I think the other thing is that this is just the start. Because I think a year from now, 25 to 30 cities, It speaks to this $1 trillion autonomous valuation that we believe alone will be for Tesla.
So, Sarah, coming over to you. I mean, I'm going to take Dan's words. It's just a start. Other companies are ahead of it, including Waymo. Also, Amazon has its own self-driving company that they're rolling out as well. What did you make of what we saw and heard over the weekend?
I actually just saw a report that apparently people are capturing videos of them speeding, swerving into the wrong lanes. And
oh, God damn it. Retard alert. Yesterday, some guy on X posted this. Dear Tesla skeptics, haters, and bears, be careful to lift with your knees as you move the goalposts again. Sincerely, a concerned citizen. Imagine being this much of a hater that instead of acknowledging in your opening comments the remarkable feat Tesla has achieved by charging customers for their first fares in fully autonomous Tesla vehicles, those exact same vehicles they call Tesla Model Ys, currently the world's best-selling vehicle last year and the year prior and no doubt this year as well. Production vehicles that are being sold to customers also with a software update now able to move people from point A to point B, paying customers autonomously. Robotaxis are here. They did it vision only when everyone said you need LiDAR and radar and blah, blah, blah. Imagine the very first thing out of your mouth is a piece of Tesla Q Virgin catnip. Oh, I read there was a thing that happened that wasn't perfect. Straight out of the gate, this total retard has completely discredited anything else she says, showing an extreme and unreasonable negative bias toward Tesla. It's okay to acknowledge the incredible feat they've pulled off. They did it. 10 years in the making. Congratulations. Well done. Nobody said vision would work. It did. Wow. Amazing. But it's still not perfect. You could at least do that. Then you'd have some credibility. But no, straight out of the gates. Anyone want to guess who she voted for in the recent US presidential election? By the way, I don't know why I'd even say that. Totally irrelevant, right? Couldn't possibly be ideologically driven Tesla hate, right? She's reasonable and rational, right?
look, I'm not a great driver. You can ask my mom, but also not a computer car that's supposed to lead a company to $1 trillion market cap. And so, the whole sort of premise of robotaxis is that they are safer and more efficient than having real drivers in the car because there's a lot of cost to them. So, is Tesla behind Waymo? Yes. I've lived in San Francisco for a long time, so I've seen almost every iteration of self-driving cars test.
Imagine my shock to discover that the guest has lived in San Francisco for a long time. Just in case anyone is curious, in completely unrelated matters and certainly nothing to do with the prior point I made about, I definitely don't know who she would have voted for, to be actually serious for a moment. I had no idea she lived in San Francisco, but boy, am I totally not shocked. Here's the recent US presidential election results in the city of San Francisco. 80.33% of ballots from San Francisco were cast for the worst US presidential candidate in history and the worst vice presidential candidate in history, the Kamala DMF Harris Tim Walz card. Brother! 15.53% for Donald J. Trump and JD Vance. Now, I still don't know how this very intelligent guest voted in the US presidential election. I should not even speculate, but my spidey sense still remains undefeated. And I have a hunch, possibly, that the guest here may be part of the San Francisco thought bubble, where you would see something as astonishing as 80+% of voters signing up for a retarded DEI candidate and a quote knucklehead.
Testing. I still have a lot of concerns about the fact that they don't have LiDAR, that they're not releasing a ton of safety data. Time will certainly tell. I agree with Dan that it is the beginning, but I think that the reality is that they're pretty far behind most of their competitors.
I have a question for you guys, so let me know in the comments. A genuine question, by the way. Do you think that she actually believes what she's saying? Does she actually genuinely have concerns that without LiDAR, Tesla may not be able to, I don't know, say hypothetically operate autonomous vehicles for paying customers in the United States because they're already doing it? Or, conspiracy alert, is it possible maybe that the only reason she's going to get invited to discuss anything is if she plays the Tesla bear, or is there some other reason? Because this is a very bizarre thing. Some of this cognitive dissonance we're seeing now, again, with the Tesla haters moving the goalposts. They are now officially a robotaxi company paying customers to use their autonomous vehicles, which are in fact currently operating autonomously and taking them from point A to point B without LiDAR. And also, again, without a single major incident so far. So what do you guys think? Does Sarah really have some actual genuine concerns that Tesla may not be able to solve autonomy without LiDAR? Or is this their only chance of appearing in CBS? Or maybe there's another reason. Maybe Elon bad because Orange Man bad. I don't know. I'm curious. What do you think? Want more content? Early access? Bunch of perks? Click the links in the pinned comment. AG1 is awesome. I've been taking it daily now for more than 3 years. It's a great way to fill in nutritional gaps. It's packed full of vitamins, minerals, and whole food source nutrients, plus has prebiotics, probiotics, and adaptogens to improve gut health, regularity, and help your body handle stress. I'm always looking for an edge to help me feel and perform my best, which is why I haven't missed a day of AG1 for more than 3 years. Just try it and see how you feel. Click the link in the pinned comment or head to drinkag1.com/SMR and get yourself a free 1-year supply of vitamin D3 plus K2 and 5 travel packs.